A girl was crossing the street when she unexpectedly saw her high school first love. She bravely walked toward him, but the man turned his head and didn't notice her at all. They passed each other by. After 4 years of longing, the girl couldn't help but look back, only to find that there was already someone else by his side. 4 years of blessings. Their classmates nearby also clap and cheer for the two. And he's a full-fledged rich second generation. Left. He found it very interesting. At that moment, Jojo was called to the teacher's office. The school was organizing a trip to a nearby town for a few weeks, and the teacher asked Jojo why she wasn't going. Jojo said that her family lived in that town, so she didn't want to go. Then the teacher asked Jojo why she wasn't eating in the cafeteria. Jojo replied, and worked part-time at night. She was currently staying with her aunt's family, where she faced constant difficulties and bullying from her aunt and cousin. Despite all this, Jojo could only silently endure. Meanwhile, Sun Oh was waiting at the school field for his old friend Hai Young, whom he hadn't seen in years. Hai Young left. At that moment, the sky began to change. Sun Oh and Jojo were gazing at each other, and without realizing it, a little seed of affection began to grow between them. On the way home, while waiting at a red light, Sun Oh noticed Hai Young staring intently at Jojo on the side of the road. He immediately told his assistant to follow her, saying that she was the girl Hai Young liked. Sun Oh asked Hai Young if he liked her, but Hai Young replied that he didn't. When they followed Jojo home, Hai Young got out of the car angrily. Sun Oh walked up to him and Hai Young told him that Sun Oh had a boyfriend. Sun Oh casually responded, "So what?" All the burdens she had to bear. Jojo's boyfriend, Marks, invited her to the internet cafe to play games. To save money, Jojo hid out to Marks that she was there. Jojo gave him a sharp look, thinking, "If I go to the internet..." When she turned around, she saw it was him again and asked why. Sun Oh, in turn, asked her why she hadn't gone home either. He then took out his phone. Unexpectedly, Sun Oh led the girl into a small alley and without hesitation bluntly said something asking her for a kiss. Jojo immediately told him his behavior was strange and turned to leave. Sun Oh grabbed her, asking why she was working part-time. Jojo revealed that her parents had passed away. After the kiss, both of them felt a little awkward. In the alley, lightning flashed, and soon it began to pour rain. Jojo pulled Sun Oh under a bus stop shelter to avoid the rain, and they smiled looking at each other. When Jojo returned to her aunt's grocery store, her aunt remarked that because of her lateness, she had lost 90,000 won. Her aunt mentioned that her mother had already owed a lot of debt, and Jojo had been working for 11 years but had only managed to pay off half of it. Her aunt then turned away, visibly upset. Distracted by Marks' situation, Jojo went to class, feeling uneasy. Her classmates started whispering and pointing at her, making her anxious. When she checked her phone, she was shocked someone had taken a picture of her kissing Sun Oh and posted it on the school forum. During the break, Jojo's boyfriend received a photo, became furious, and stormed into Sun Oh's classroom, giving him a hard beating. Hai Young tried to step in and stop it, but Sun Oh held him back, saying that this beating was inevitable. Afterwards, Hai Young mocked Sun Oh, saying it was the first time he had seen Sun Oh willingly get beaten up over a girl, which showed that he must really like Jojo. On the other hand, Jojo opened her phone and saw the video of her boyfriend fighting. She went to her boyfriend's martial arts training hall that night. The lights inside weren't on. Her boyfriend guessed what Jojo was there to say and immediately said he would act like nothing had happened. Jojo then took out her phone and opened the Love Bell app, which showed that no one within 10 meters liked her. He said to her that he didn't truly love her. Back in the classroom, her classmates continued to gossip about her. Suddenly, Sun Oh appeared and took her hand, saying, "Let's get some fresh air." He grabbed her soft hand and walked out of the classroom, causing the other students to giggle. As they left, Jojo suddenly stopped, gave Sun Oh a fierce look, and confidently pulled him back, taking control as they walked away hand in hand, leaving the students murmuring behind them. Outside the building, Jojo wanted to know if Sun Oh was just playing with her, so she opened her Love Bell app, only to find that no one nearby liked her. Disappointed, she turned to leave, but Sun Oh quickly stopped her and explained that he had turned off his app. To prove their feelings for each other, Sun Oh led her to an open basketball court. Both of them turned on their Love Bell apps at the same time, and Jojo's phone soon received a signal from Sun Oh's Love Bell. Just as Sun Oh was about to check Jojo's phone, Hai Young, standing in the distance, saw her screen and, understanding the situation, quietly walked away. During lunchtime, Sun Oh went to the cafeteria and approached Jojo's cousin. She thought he was there to ask for her number, but instead, Sun Oh asked for Jojo's number. Jojo was sitting on a bench at school, eating bread, when she suddenly received a text from Sun. Remembering the heart-pounding moment when Sun Oh rang her love bell that morning, she couldn't believe that happiness had arrived so suddenly. Sun Oh slowly approached her and asked why she hadn't replied to his message. Embarrassed, Jojo ran away, and Sun Oh couldn't help but laugh as he watched her small figure disappear. That evening, Sun Oh went to pick Jojo up after work, accompanying her on the bus and walking with her, chatting along the way. Sun Oh wanted to confirm if her love bell had rung during the day. After some persistence, Jojo finally opened the app, and both of their love bells rang at the same time. Overjoyed, Sun Oh held her hand like an excited child. They expressed their true love and officially became a couple. After school, they strolled down the leaf-covered paths, chatting about things that interested them. Sun Oh stopped suddenly, turned around and kissed Jojo, leaving the shy girl flustered. Sun Oh then said, "I hope this moment will stay beautiful forever. You can't leave me," no matter what. He then hugged her tightly. After Sun Oh walked Jojo home, he watched her leave. Just then, Jojo's cousin Gulmi appeared behind Sun Oh and said, "I have something to tell you." It is revealed Jojo secretly ate expired food every day. Jojo always had a smile on her face and never acted pitiful in front of her wealthy boyfriend. However, Sun Oh found out that she often hid on the playground to eat expired seaweed rice rolls while the other students went to the cafeteria for hot meals. He decided to do something about it. The next day, he had the school's homeroom teacher give her a meal card, solving the problem while preserving her dignity. The teacher advised Jojo to eat properly and stop dieting. He also reminded her to prepare for the school's upcoming trip. Jojo smiled and left. While eating in the cafeteria, Gulmi glanced at her, though Jojo still didn't know that all of this was Sun Oh's doing. Sun Oh came over to Jojo, giving her his food and milk, telling her to eat more. Seeing the sweet couple, the classmates around them couldn't help but cast envious looks. But Jojo's cousin interfered, spreading rumors at school that Jojo was a freeloader. Everyone soon knew that Sun Oh had paid for her meals, making Jojo feel small and humiliated. Unable to stand the slander directed at the girl he loved, Sun Oh furiously confronted Jojo's cousin, demanding to know why she spread the rumors. When she responded irrationally, Sun Oh turned to leave, but Gulmi hugged him and confessed that she did it because she liked him. However, Sun Oh wasn't swayed by her sweet words, bluntly telling her that she was only interested in him because of his wealth and family status. Gulmi, humiliated, was about to leave when Jojo witnessed everything. Realizing that his actions had caused pain for his girlfriend, Sun Oh apologized and took Jojo's hand, asking for her forgiveness. Seeing how much her boyfriend defended her dignity, Jojo felt deeply moved. Ha-young, watching from behind, saw everything silently. That night, Jojo returned home and overheard Gulmi plotting to get revenge on Sun Oh. She rushed forward to grab the phone, but she tells her that everything she had was because of her mother's help and that she was living, eating, and using everything provided by them. She questioned whether Sun Oh would still love her if he knew her true self and if she had any right to be happy. Just as Jojo tried to fight back, her aunt suddenly appeared and began scolding her, calling her ungrateful and saying she had no reason to feel wronged. Hurt, Jojo ran out, overwhelmed by painful childhood memories. She ran until she was almost out of breath, and just when she was at her lowest, a man appeared. Sun Oh. He always showed up in her world whenever she felt hopeless, bringing a bit of brightness to her otherwise dark life. That night, in their room, Jojo and Sun Oh opened up about their feelings. Sun Oh admitted, "The first time I saw you, I thought you grew up in a loving family with great parents because you seemed so cheerful." Jojo replied, "After my parents passed away, I went through a lot of painful experiences. During those times, I forced myself to be happy, to laugh more, and work harder in school to avoid letting the sadness take over." Sun Oh said, "If anyone dares to bully you, just tell me." Jojo smiled and reassured him, "Don't worry, I can protect myself." The next day, their classmates embarked on the trip, excitedly taking photos upon arrival. Sun Oh and Jojo held hands, chatting about the beautiful scenery. Jojo recalled childhood memories of the place. They strolled through the gardens, sharing secrets like couples do. Later in the evening, the classmates gathered for a couples party in their rooms, but Jojo, wanting to rest, chose not to join. She quietly left for an empty room with no blankets or heating. She sat down and fell asleep leaning against the wall. In the middle of the night, Jojo was startled awake by the smell of something burning. It turned out that the candles from the party had ignited one of the blankets, causing a fire. Panic ensued as everyone rushed to escape. Jojo arrived just in time to witness the chaos, and the sight of the fire triggered memories of her parents' tragic death. Terrified, she ran to the window, pounding on it in a daze. Marks, one of her classmates, called out to her, but she didn't respond, still in shock. She then ran to another window, frantically trying to open it. When she finally managed to open the window, she stood frozen in place, her mind overwhelmed by the past. It wasn't until she heard someone calling her name that she started to come back to her senses. The teachers and students who rushed to the scene were all terrified by JoJo's reaction, seeing how deeply shaken she was by the fire. JoJo was haunted by her past, having lost her parents in a fire when she was young. She had miraculously survived but developed a condition that triggered memories of that tragic event whenever she saw flames. The trauma left her in a daze, often unaware of her own actions. Once she regained her senses, JoJo quickly ran away, desperate to escape the place filled with pain and helplessness. As she reached the ground floor, she bumped into Sun Oh, who had come looking for her. The sight of him brought her a flicker of warmth, and tears streamed down her face as she rushed into his arms, seeking comfort. "My heart hurts so much," she confessed. "I don't want to stay here. Please take me away." They rode away on Sun Oh's beloved motorcycle, feeling the wind rush past them as they sped along the road. Eventually, they arrived at the beach, gazing at the sea. Sun Oh opened up about his own family struggles, explaining how his parents were indifferent to his life and only pretended to care in front of others. They spent the night sharing their stories until dawn broke, riding back to the hotel on the motorcycle, the sea breeze filling them with a sense of relief. JoJo felt a deep happiness within her. Sun Oh turned to look at the girl he cherished, but in that moment, the motorcycle veered into the wrong lane. As Sun Oh heard the blaring horn of an approaching vehicle, he tried to switch lanes, but it was too late. They collided violently and were thrown onto the grass beside the road. JoJo desperately tried to wake Sun Oh, but when she regained consciousness in the hospital, he was nowhere to be found. Panic surged through her as she couldn't reach him on her phone. Back at school, whispers circulated among her classmates, discussing her strange behavior at the hotel and the accident that followed. They called her an omen of misfortune. Hai Young overheard their cruel words and exploded with anger. He shouted, pointing at one of the classmates. JoJo then asked Hai Young about Sun Oh. That evening, JoJo arrived at Sun Oh's house and saw Hai Young coming out. He was preparing to take her to see Sun Oh, but just then, his parents returned home. They quickly hid behind a car, unsure of what to do next. Unbeknownst to JoJo, she overheard a conversation between Sun Oh's parents discussing his impulsive behavior. They expressed their discontent, stating that if he continued to act without considering the family's reputation, they would send him back abroad, disregarding his feelings for JoJo. Hearing this made JoJo feel uneasy, as if she were the cause of the trouble in Sun Oh's life. Thinking about her own struggles in Sun Oh's situation, she feared that loving him could lead to more pain for both of them, and she walked away slowly, lost in her worries. Just then, she caught sight of Sun Oh approaching, and her heart raced. Sun Oh saw her and they exchanged glances, both wanting to say so much but unsure where to begin. JoJo gently touched his hand, asking, "Does it hurt?" "Not when I see you," Sun Oh replied with a smile. The smile on Sun Oh's face made JoJo make a decision in her heart. When she found out that Sun Oh could return to school the next day, she didn't feel the excitement she had expected. Instead, she told Sun Oh to hurry home. Sun Oh agreed, but JoJo's heart was heavy, not with joy but with pain. She couldn't shake off the memory of his parents' words or the stark differences between them. In her heart, she made a decision as she looked back at the boy she cared for so deeply. Little did Sun Oh know, the girl he loved was slowly distancing herself from him. As she watched him leave, tears filled her eyes. Late at night, JoJo crouched down and unlocked the shield of the love alarm given to her by the founder. Once this shield is activated, it means that the person she loves will no longer receive the sound of her love alarm. No one can deactivate it except the developer. She deeply loves Sun Oh but feels unworthy of him, unable to stand by his side. It's as if they live in different worlds. As memories of their time together flooded her mind, she retreated to a corner of the shop and broke down, sobbing quietly, feeling the weight of her decision. On the school rooftop, Sun Oh confronted JoJo, asking for the reason for snubbing him. JoJo says she wants to break up with him, as she wants to focus on her studies. Sun Oh grabbed her hand, pleading. JoJo pulled his hand away. "From now on, let's just pretend we don't know each other," she said, turning to leave. He chased her to the school cafeteria, nearly desperate. What Sun Oh never expected was that only his love alarm rang, humiliating the school heartthrob in front of everyone. The students began gossiping, but Sun Oh refused to give up. Hai Young, seeing how humble Sun Oh had become, quietly led him out of the school. Every night afterward, JoJo would run home after school, hoping all her sadness would fade away with each step. Their final meeting took place in the alley where they shared their first kiss. Sun Oh once again asked why they broke up, and JoJo simply said she didn't like him anymore. Sun Oh grabbed her and said maybe a kiss could make her fall for him again, but Jojo avoided it. Sun Oh, feeling utterly dejected, remarked that maybe extreme love leads to revenge. He told Jojo to always keep her love alarm active so she could watch as he slowly stopped liking her. 4 years later, Sun Oh returned from the US, and Ha Young had just graduated from Seoul National University. Jojo was still working hard, balancing her job and studies as she prepared for university. To save up for tuition, she took a job as a wedding assistant. While delivering a wedding dress at a traffic light, today marked the 1530th day since the app was launched, and it also happened to be Christmas. As the advertisement for Love Bell played on the screen, its logo appeared amidst the clouds in the sky. People around began to pull out their phones, excitedly capturing him than before. Facing him brought a swirl of emotions for Jojo. Lost in her thoughts, Jojo stood still until someone bumped into her, snapping her back to reality. She resumed her heavy steps, only to be interrupted by the notification from the love alarm on her phone, indicating that someone nearby liked her. Look, Jojo. Time seemed to freeze as Jojo felt like a stranger watching them pass by. Young noticed a familiar figure, glancing back. Then, someone called out to Sun Oh. As she turned, Jojo saw a cute girl wrap her arms around him, their smiles reflecting an intimacy that hit her deeply. She turned on her heels and walked away. Sun Oh's love alarm rang too. While in the car, he looked up and saw that it was his new girlfriend who had triggered the alarm. The two had met in the US and had recently returned to Korea. In the car, Sun Oh tenderly blew on food for his girlfriend, his every gesture filled with warmth, yet for some unknown reason his girlfriend could never trigger his love alarm app. Later that evening, back at home, Sun Oh sat at the dinner table with his parents, who were engrossed in discussing business matters. Frustrated, he asked Ha Young, "Let's go eat out." He complained in this house he can never feel warmth. They can barely have a meal together without talking about boring stuff. His parents exchanged glances but continued their conversation, leaving Sun Oh feeling more angry than ever. He and Ha Young made their way to a bar, where they enjoyed drinks and discussed typical boys' topics, trying to escape the tense atmosphere from home. Meanwhile, Jojo was still staying with her aunt, who had become less difficult over time. She was watching a TV program where the host was discussing the Love Bell app when her aunt asked her to take some food to her cousin. Across town, her cousin Gulmi was desperately trying to elevate her status. Over the past 4 years, she had transformed herself through makeup and fitness, but every opportunity still seemed to slip away. Now she was live streaming at home, trying to become a fashion influencer, speaking in hesitant tones as she showcased outfits in front of her computer. While Jojo was delivering food, she caught a glimpse of a familiar face on Gulmi's computer screen. "Who's that?" Jojo asked. "That's Yuk Jo," Gulmi replied, a well-known fashionista. "She's Sun Oh's girlfriend now. They met abroad." Jojo's heart raced at the news. Panicking, she rushed out of the house, her mind recalling with Gulmi's words. Jojo remembered the day she saw Sun Oh with Yuk Jo. Laughing and embracing each other, she quickly took out her phone and searched for Yuk Jo's information, discovering that she was the CEO of a successful company. As she flipped through Yuk Jo's profile, seeing pictures of her and Sun Oh together, Jojo took a deep breath. Meanwhile, Yuk Jo, with Sun Oh by her side, was preparing for a fashion release, elegantly showcasing the latest styles. The two certainly looked like a perfect couple. At the same time, Jojo entered the library, hoping to take a break from her studies. She noticed Ha Young approaching and, feeling flustered, quickly looked down to avoid him, unaware that he had already spotted her. Ha Young, seeing her anxious demeanor, decided not to approach her and instead found a random seat nearby. Thinking Ha Young hadn't seen her, Jojo felt a sense of relief and took the chance to slip away. Just as she exited the library, she ran into Ha Young, who had been waiting outside. "Long time no see," he said with a smile. Without giving her a chance to respond, he hopped on his bike and rode off, leaving Jojo surprised. Meanwhile, Sun Oh and Yuk Jo arrived at an upscale event, an exclusive club that many dreamt of visiting. This club only admitted well-known personalities and entrepreneurs, and both Yuk Jo and Sun Oh were regulars there. Upon entering, Yuk Jo immediately spotted her close friends, leaving Sun Oh to find a seat and wait. As he sat down, he could feel the attraction he had toward women. He prepared to check his phone, hoping to use the app to find a date when Yuk Jo rejoined him, playfully cutting off his chance. His girlfriend asked about his Christmas plans, but Sun Oh said he was planning to invite Hwa Young to join them. Yuk Jo's expression changed, and she teasingly remarked that they should find a girlfriend for Ha Young, otherwise it seemed Sun Oh's heart would always be with Ha Young. At that moment, Sun Oh's thoughts drifted to Jojo. He recalled their past connection just as Ha-young reflected on his unexpected encounter with her at the library. Ha-young was determined this time he was going to confess to Jojo. He thought to himself that he couldn't miss this opportunity again. His mother called him for dinner, but he felt like a fool, his expression betraying the excitement of growing love. The next day at the library, Jojo found there were no available seats but noticed that Ha-young had saved one for her. She stepped out to ask him why he did that. Ha-young smiled and said, "Don't you really know why?" He finally confessed his feelings to Jojo. Without waiting for Jojo to respond, he turned and left. Finally, Ha-young had said the words he'd kept inside for years. At home, Sun-oh asked why Ha-young had dressed so formally just to go to the library. Ha-young replied that he was meeting someone important. Ha-young's expression turned serious as he replied, "It's Jojo. I've always liked her." Sun-oh immediately realized what was going on. On the road, memories flooded Sun-oh's mind. Meanwhile, Jojo, taking a break outside the library, suddenly heard her love alarm ring. Looking around, she saw that Sun-oh had unconsciously come to the library as well. After not seeing each other for 4 years, the first thing Sun-oh said was to tell her not to get involved with Ha-young. He didn't want his brother to suffer the same hurt and pain he had experienced 4 years ago. Jojo hesitated but didn't explain further. At home, Jojo was waiting for Gulmi, filled with anger. Gulmi had taken all of Jojo's savings, planning to use the money to enhance her appearance to gain entry into the club, and then throwing her study materials out the window. Jojo felt utterly defeated. She stomped downstairs to gather the scattered pages. Just as a heavy book was about to land on him, Ha-young rushed in, shielding her from the impending blow. Without saying a word, Ha-young helped her pick up the fallen books, offering silent support. Understanding his friend's frustration, Ha-young suggested they take a walk to the riverbank to vent. "Just shout whatever you're feeling. It'll help," he encouraged, gesturing towards the water. Jojo took a deep breath and stood at the edge, letting the cool breeze wash over her. Shouting out his frustration, Ha-young stood beside her. After Ha-young walked Jojo home, she gave him a drink to express her gratitude. Next day, Sun-oh, who was having breakfast, sees Jojo's message. That day, Sun-oh found out from a conversation between his mother and the housekeeper that Ha-young was moving away. He rushed to the convenience store where Jojo worked but found it closed. Meanwhile, Jojo was heading to the place where she had agreed to meet Ha-young. After much thought, she decided to be honest with him, expressing her gratitude for everything he had done. However, even though he had installed the love bell, she couldn't ring it for him. After her breakup with Sun-oh, she believed she would never love anyone again and might remain that way in the future. Ha-young, unfazed, assured her that as long as her feelings were genuine, that was enough for him. Whether she ignored his messages, stood him up, or even rejected him, he would accept it all, as every moment was a romantic memory of Jojo for him. Moved by his words, Jojo agreed to let him ring her love bell. Overjoyed, Ha-young enthusiastically declared he would ring all the bells from the past 4 years. He rode his bike around her, repeatedly ringing the bell. Jojo didn't fully understand the feelings of the thousands of members of the Love Bell Club, but at that moment, thanks to the one person who could ring her bell, she felt a glimmer of hope for happiness. One evening when Jojo returned home, she saw Sun-oh waiting for her. Sun-oh had been standing outside the convenience store all day just to see her. Sun-oh asked if she liked Ha-young, stating that he was trying to make an effort. He asked why he couldn't be the one she put effort into. Jojo apologized, admitting she had been immature back then. She knew she had hurt Sun-oh and had once tried to turn off her shield. However, even after changing phones, she couldn't disable it. This time, she decided to meet the developer of the Love Bell to shut off the shield. The next day, Sun-oh was sitting in the garden waiting for Ha-young. When he saw the rental contract in Ha-young's hand, it felt like a stab to the heart. Ha-young was fully aware of Sun-oh's feelings but couldn't stop himself from loving Jojo. Just as they began to argue, Sun-oh's love bell suddenly rang. It was Yuk-jo who had arrived. This was the first time Yuk-jo had been to Sun-oh's room. She saw his high school yearbook and casually flipped through it, spotting a photo of Jojo. She realized this was the girl Sun-oh had been talking about. At that moment, Sun-oh came in with juice. Instead of questioning him, Yuk-jo told him that the Love Bell press conference was about to begin. At the Love Bell launch event, protests against the app broke out in the streets. Jojo, caught in the crowd, struggled to reach the event. Ha-young, watching the live stream from his computer, saw a signature on the screen identical to Jojo's, making him worry for her safety. He rushed to the scene. Jojo finally made it into the lobby, only to run into Sun-oh and his new girlfriend, creating an awkward tension. Jojo tried to walk away, but after a few steps her love bell rang, signaling someone nearby liked her. Sun-oh was within 10 meters. Yukjo, Sun-oh's girlfriend, knew about their past and felt heartbroken. Suddenly, JoJo's love bell rang again. It was Ha-young. At the launch, the founder introduced a new feature for the love bell, the ability to predict who might fall in love with you in the future. After the event, JoJo approached the founder to ask how to disable her love bell's firewall. Unbeknownst to her, Sun-oh overheard the conversation. Realizing the full story, Sun-oh confronted JoJo. Afraid of losing the ability to love without the love bell, JoJo panicked and ran away from him. The scene then shifts to a university cafeteria, where Ha-young repeatedly rings JoJo's love bell, drawing envious looks from others. Embarrassed, JoJo tells Ha-young to sit down. Ha-young excitedly tells her that she has appeared on his phone screen, showing that she will like him in the future. Seeing how adorable Ha-young is, JoJo smiles happily. After lunch, Ha-young takes JoJo to his rented apartment. While she is reading, Ha-young takes a photo of her with his camera. Noticing this, JoJo playfully poses for more shots. After taking photos of JoJo, Ha-young also took some of him and them together. The atmosphere between them began to heat up, slowly moved closer. JoJo moved backward, making the curtains fall. Just as things became awkward, Ha-young playfully bumped his head against hers, and they both laughed it off. That evening, while JoJo was working at the convenience store, her love bell rang, but the person who appeared was a stranger. The man suddenly grabbed her hand and asked why she hadn't updated her comic yet. Scared, JoJo hurried away, but the man pursued her. Terrified, she crouched in a corner until her love bell rang again. It was Ha-young. Relieved, fearing the man might still be nearby, Ha-young took her to his place. As JoJo lay on the bed, Ha-young hung curtains to block the morning light, worried it might hurt her eyes. He noticed her loneliness, perhaps because of their similar childhood experiences, and provided the perfect companionship. Even though JoJo didn't love him, Ha-young was willing to wait. Suddenly, JoJo hugged him from behind. Next day, Sun-oh returned to school to confess his deep love for JoJo again. Their conversation was quickly recorded by students, and uncomfortable with the attention, left the scene. The video was soon uploaded online, and the internet began criticizing her harshly. Ha-young saw the video too and, consumed with concern, no longer cared about jealousy. He only worried about JoJo. JoJo's close friend told Ha-young that she had left her phone at school. Meanwhile, Sun-oh's current girlfriend was in the middle of a cold war with him. When she saw the video of Sun-oh and JoJo, she couldn't stop crying. Ha-young, unable to find JoJo even after going to the convenience store, ended up encountering Sun-oh there. Ha-young angrily approached him and punched him, calling him selfish. Sun-oh punched back, but eventually, Ha-young found JoJo. Without any accusations, he asked, "Are you okay?" JoJo breaks down expressing her fears. Ha-young, without saying a word, just hug her and comfort her. Later on her way home, JoJo saw Sun-oh again. She gathered her thoughts and told him that whenever he was around, her mind would become messy. But this time, she couldn't stop thinking about Ha-young. She cared about his feelings, wondering how he would react and if he'd be hurt. She confessed that even if her love bell never rings again, what she feels now is entirely her own, hoping Sun-oh would understand. Feeling exhausted, JoJo returned home. Seeing the photos that Ha-young had taken of her, showing her so happy, she made up her mind. She hadn't cherished her relationship with Sun-oh during her youth, but now she wanted to fully embrace her feelings for Ha-young. She immediately sent him a message and ran out of the house. Ha-young, upon receiving her message, rushed out, thinking something had happened to her. He didn't even bother with his bicycle, running as fast as he could. When they were close, JoJo asked him to stop and unlock the shield of her love bell, indicating she loved him too. Ha-young smiled seeing that. Sun-oh's girlfriend adored by thousands, yet she can't win her boyfriend's heart. Even so, she couldn't bring herself to stop loving him. One day, Yukjo, turning to leave, told Sun-oh she didn't want to continue like this anymore. She would leave for a while, and if by the time she returned, Sun-oh still didn't love her, she would try to let go of the relationship. Months later, Yukjo returned to Korea. At the airport, she saw Sun-oh on a promotional program on TV, still full of emotion. When she got back to her apartment, nothing had changed. She started packing her things, and just then, the video intercom showed footage of recent visitors to her home. To her surprise, Sun-oh had been coming to see her every day during her absence, not knowing when she'd return but giving them both time to reflect. Yukjo needed time to think, and Sun-oh also needed space to reflect. He gave them both time for reflection. Perhaps Sun-oh would never ring anyone's love bell again, but he wouldn't go anywhere. He would stay by Yukjo's side, waiting for her to accept him. Coincidentally, Sun-oh appeared again. Yuk-jo anxiously opened the door, searching everywhere but didn't see him. Just as she thought she was imagining things, Sun-oh returned. He expressed his love for her, speaking sweet words and asking, "Will you be with me?" Yuk-jo, touched, embraced the person she loved. These brothers also had their moments, each revealing their feelings and finding the one they love, receiving blessings from each other. On the other side, Ha-young and Jojo arrived at the island, the place where Jojo grew up, and lived out their own story. Wishing that all lovers may live happily ever after. The show ends here. See you in the next great story.